When I discovered my local park run, the 5K Saturday morning runs that take place all over the world, I was somebody very out of shape, mentally and physically. And I'm not kidding when I say that doing those runs changed my life. Getting fit and healthy, doing this for a living, even meeting my wife. None of those things would have happened without parkrun. I would still be overweight, miserable in a job that I no longer enjoyed. And to be fair, I probably would have met my wife, but I'm not convinced that my charm and quick wit would have been enough given the fat and miserable part. So in this video, how I went from failing to even finish a park run to now being real close to the front, and the reason why I'm about to stop doing them for good. So I did my first park run at Thames Valley Park. It would have been about 2011, maybe I'd have been about 37. At that stage I'd been losing weight for about a year, and already my attempts at jogging and not passing out had got good enough that trying it that close to a river no longer seemed like a particularly high-risk exercise. And the diet and the running was going okay. I actually lost a lot of weight real quick once I decided to eat less and start moving around, but it would have been unsustainable if that's all it was. Just denying myself the food that I enjoyed and forcing myself to run from one lamppost to the next, I couldn't have done that for much longer before giving up. I needed more. And people might think, well, is how you feel and how you look not enough? No, if it was that easy, everybody would just eat right and they'd look and feel great. It is simply not that straightforward. So once I built up the confidence to no longer only run in the dark, I went down there and I found like-minded people. I found competition against myself, the clock and others, and ultimately it just lit the fuse to pretty much every sporting and physical achievement I've had since, and all that's come from it. It gave me everything I needed to fuel that journey. Although I said I went there, on day one I actually went and sat in the car. I watched everybody run around, I didn't get out, I then went home and did a couple more months of running around in the dark, and then got up the courage to go back and get out of the car, and for a few weeks just did that and still watched, and eventually joined in. And I started off running so slowly I didn't even record my times. My watch would say 30 minutes are gone, the finish line would still be miles off, and I would just stop right there and head back to the car. I told myself I wanted to go into 30 minutes, I should be able to do that, and I would not be crossing the line until I could. And that was a stupid attitude. It makes no sense. If you're currently doing 35, 45, 55-minute park runs, keep doing what you're doing. You are being sensible. Me ducking out before the end was ridiculous, childish even, but it's what I did. So part one of this video is the 3 types of run that I did to get from there to where I was about 10 years later, running around 21-minute park runs. And super important, I don't advise you do any of these things. I'm not a trainer, I'm not an expert. I don't have an app for you to download or a program to sell you. I make videos, not adverts. This is just what I did. I should also say 2 things that helped me a lot were learning to run with good form and continuing to lose weight. Can you run with bad form? Yes. Can you run while overweight? Yes, I did both initially. But had I not fixed those, I would not have progressed the way that I did. And even today, if I get sloppy with how I run or I put on weight, then my performance and my enjoyment of running goes downhill. How far you take it, it's up to you. For example, if I was to go and get professional running coaching and continue losing more weight, no question, I'd improve as a runner. But at this point in time, the improvement would be small versus the effort to achieve it, so I'm happy where I am. Your happy spot will be where you find it. So I did 3 types of run each week, all the way from those first attempts of not even crossing the line through to running around 20 minutes. I say each week, in theory, there would be many weeks where I only ran a couple of times, plenty of weeks where I didn't run at all. In fact, over those 10 years, there would have been periods where I didn't run for months. So this wasn't something that I stuck to religiously, but rather a rough target to try and hit when I felt like upping my game. My progression was an upward trend, but it was not a straight line upwards, because life. So the first runs that I did was fast stuff. And actually this probably helped me more once I got faster, but either way I did it early on. It occurred to me that the fastest I ever ran was during those 5K runs on a Saturday morning before I got tired. So I had very little experience of simply running quick enough on a regular basis. So I went down to the river just behind my old house and I ran fast for me at the time. I would run 1K as close to 6 minutes as I could get. I'd then stop and take a breather, by which I meant I'd lie on the floor and I'd hope that I didn't need an ambulance. And then when I felt good again, I would do it again, another kilometre, and I would repeat it until I'd done 5k. I probably spent more time resting than running, but eventually I built up to being able to do 5-6 minute kilometres in one session. And once I had that, I worked on reducing the break I was taking between each run. And eventually I got down to doing 30 minutes in a park run. I would then go and do 5-minute 45 kilometres and so on. And this is important. Regular runners are going to be thinking, well, sure, do interval sessions, obviously. But if you're new to running and you don't feel particularly comfortable doing it in any pace, I understand that it is easy to dismiss stuff like this as sort of for the experts, doing intervals and rest and timing stuff as proper training. And you just want to go out and jog. Don't believe that. Training is training. If you own trainers, you're ready to train. If you were learning to play the piano, you would not just keep trying to play a simple song. You would do chords and whatever piano things people do. And to give you an idea of how uncomfortable I felt doing it, I can remember going down to that river and doing a 1 kilometre interval and finishing by a tree that I knew was the end of the K. And as I approached it, there was a group of kids sat under it, and I felt self-conscious about stopping and then checking my watch and stuff and then heading off again, taking a rest. I thought they'd be watching me and thinking, what's this big joker doing? What's Steve Cram up to? So I didn't stop. I ran further on past them, which nearly killed me. And then once I'd recovered, I realised that if I ran backwards for my 2nd kilometre, I'd go past them again, and they'd realise I was doing some sort of training. So I went home. I understand what it is like to not feel comfortable with what you're doing. Trust me, it does not last. Your confidence will follow that same wavy trend upwards. Second type of runs, long stuff. And I discovered this much later. I was already running 23, 24-minute 5Ks at this point. So once a week I'd run way past 5K. I say way past, initially probably 6K. But then I built it up, 7, 8, 9, doing some 10K runs, then some half marathon distance in training, and ultimately running ultra marathons, 50K and beyond. And again, if those numbers sound insane to you, I guarantee you they would have sounded very insane to me, sat in my car, scared to get out and join in on day one. Let's give it time. Also, don't forget, I was going very slowly on those long runs, but it did still mean just spending a long time jogging in one go. So when my Saturday morning 5K came around, suddenly that massive challenge became just far less significant in my mind. The idea of running for 25 minutes became mentally just very doable. Nowadays, people will say, well, of course, yes, the advantages of zone 2 training and cardiovascular this and blah, blah, blah. And they are right. But for me, still for me now, the biggest benefit of spending ages running in one go, occasionally, is that when I do come and do a park run, it's just a walk in the park. In fact, because I'm so used to running or training for long duration, things like a 10K now, even that just feels much easier to get my head around as something short and sweet and compact. Being halfway through a 10K now and thinking, well, just 20 minutes to go, the end's in sight, it's lovely. When I first ran 10Ks, we were halfway around, it felt like what was still to come was just insurmountable. So, climb a mountain slow and you'll find running up a little hill easy. It's a metaphor. You don't need to run up mountains or climb them even for park run. And the last type of run that I did was doing the park run. This sounds a bit obvious, but I did more than just turn up and do it. And I still do this now. I learned the park run, and each park run I did was different, so I learned them all. And by that I mean I got very familiar with the route. Where did it get busy? Where were the bottlenecks on the course? At what point was the 4 kilometre mark? So I could mentally think, okay, it's time to dig in now and push. Was there an uphill section at some stage that I could prepare myself for? Or a downhill section that I could take advantage of and go a bit faster? This course here, it's Woodley. It's where I've done all my fastest park runs. I know this course like the back of my hand. There's a section about 800 metres to go where there's some tree roots that go across the track. And that's the point where I start to kick on the last lap every time. There's a gentle downhill slope to the duck pond, and that's where I get past anybody that's holding me up. Nothing makes a run go quicker for me than constantly thinking about what's coming up and what I'll be doing at that point. And again, this is not some sort of elite strategy to try and win one of these things. I did this at every stage of my park run journey. Interestingly, you occasionally see people running with earphones, and I do occasionally listen to music, but 9 times out of 10, I don't have time to, because I'm thinking all the time about what I'm doing, whether it was, is this the 3 to 4K section where if I'm going to see 28 minutes this week, I need to make sure I don't flag now, or is that the tree over there, I need to start sprinting because there's now 200 meters to go and I want to try and make the top 5. If you want to just jog around and chat to your friends about what you saw on TV last night, do so, and I hope you have an amazing time. But if you want to get a little bit better, put your mind to this, not Netflix. And so that was the approach, the 3 types of run that I used to go from day one to a few years ago, where I was doing around 21-minute park runs and ultimately sub 20. 3 years later, I'm now finally about to get sub 19. And so part 2 of this video is how did I do that over the last 6 months? Because for most of the last 3 years, my best time didn't really move at all. And again, I'm sure there will be expert coaches watching this, quite rightly saying that's not the way to do it, but it's what I did. So, at the beginning of this year, I knew I could run 24, 25-minute park run very comfortably. I also knew I could not run close to sub 19. And that was because of a combination of simply not being able to go that fast. My best was 1938 from early 2020, and also having gone backwards from how fast I had been because I'd taken my foot off the gas last year regarding training and diet. So I did want to get sub 19, but I wasn't ready to get a sub 19, and quite importantly, I didn't really want to spend months being disappointed with my progress to there, or even to some extent focused on my process. I didn't want each Saturday that I did a park run to be a negative event where my time reminded me how far I was from my goal. I didn't want to be failing every week. I also didn't want the volatility that comes from pushing yourself to the limit on a regular basis, because if you do that, some weeks will be better than others. It's a bit like trying to lose weight and looking at the scales every single day. You won't lose weight consistently. Some days you might gain weight. It's better to just put the scales away, focus on the process, and then dig the scales out again in the future if you really need to. So I did this. I took that 25-minute park run time that I knew I could do easily, and I plotted a nice straight course down to 19 minutes. And every couple of weeks, I went and I ran the time on that sliding scale. In addition to doing my long runs, my fast runs, and all the other training that was going on, it meant that every time I did a park run, I knew I was going to hit that target. Because the reality was, if I was to plot a graph of my absolute limit of ability, it would have been beneath that sliding scale by some margin initially, but it would have been volatile and fluctuating. I didn't want that volatility. So all this year, I've been going to park runs, plodding around at a time that has been increasingly tough, but always doable. Every time I've left a park run, I've hit my goal happy. A couple of weeks ago, target was 19 minutes 20 seconds. I was feeling quite bouncy, I wasn't paying attention to my watch. I accidentally ran here 19 minutes 2 seconds, at which point I now know I can go sub 19, or at least I know if everything clicks in place I can run sub 19. Actually, my plan was to do that here last weekend, but for the very first time this year, I ran slower than my target. I missed it by literally a few seconds. Why? Well, when you're at the limit, the smallest problems are enough to throw you off. I don't even know what the problem was that day. Was it the meal I had the night before? Was it a lack of sleep? Not tying my shoelaces properly? It doesn't matter. It's a few seconds, I'll get it next time. And in fact, I'm actually quite glad because Jenna filmed that run because we were expecting it to be my sub 19 time, and her footage of me crossing the finish line, what with people walking into frame and then a kid's play park being between me and her, she might as well have been filming from the grassy knoll in 1963 Dallas. To be fair, there is nothing she finds more tedious to discuss than my lectures to her on how best to film me when we're out running, so I shouldn't grumble. But the plan worked. A gentle progression down to where I now am, no stress about hitting PBs on the way, just getting very used to attending a run and walking away with the result that I expected. And so here I am, many years after I finally began, finally able almost to go into 19 minutes. And I'll have another stab at it in a couple of weeks, and I would be incredibly surprised if it doesn't happen. And if it does, when it does, that will be park run over for me. And I mentioned this on a podcast recently, and a few people understandably said, why are you stopping? And it's a bit hard to explain. I always had a dream to go into 30 minutes, and then 25 minutes, and then 20, and I thought that will be it. I thought it'd be insane to think at my age and weight I'd ever go faster than that. And then I finally got sub 20, and I did it completely out of the blue. I did a park run here, New Year's Day 2020, in a really bad mood, because the night out for New Year's Eve the day before had been ruined, because the kids called us to say, come back from the hotel, the dog's sick, so we rushed back from London. The dog was fine, expensive evening out ruined, annoyed. I came here, park run, 1st of January, New Year's Day, ran it angry, knocked a huge chunk off my time. Suddenly I had the dream time. And it just felt less than I thought it would. So I reset my goal to sub 19, and then COVID derailed everything. I lost focus until now. And the thing is, this one isn't going to be achieved by accident. This one has taken some real effort. And once I get it, 18 minutes something, I don't want to go faster. At the age of almost 50, and with a multitude of other sporting interests to focus on, the effort to improve versus the benefit of doing so just doesn't add up for me. But nor do I really want to come and run fast, knowing I'll never be as quick as I once was. There's also the issue that Parkrun recently effectively banned dogs from taking part safely, so running at a more steady pace and just enjoying it with Nixon, something I often would do for fun, that's no longer possible either. Ultimately, my parkrun journey has always been progressive for me. For many people that is less the case. It's simply a weekly fun activity. I'm always jealous of them being able to view it like that. I never really have. I also regard parkrun, as I said at the very start of this video, as something that kind of rescued me from a very bad place at a bad time. And so with no progression left to achieve and no bad place to be rescued from right now, it kind of feels like it's done its job. Still doing it feels like the rocket boosters remaining attached to the shuttle once it's in orbit, or the littlest hobo not moving on at the end of an episode. So space travel, helpful husky, whichever analogy works best for you. So my intention is to get that sub 19, and that will be the final and fastest parkrun time I ever record. That said, I may volunteer at a parkrun in the future. I may even accompany someone else. Maybe Jen wants to do a parkrun and she wants me to go and pace her for it. But I won't cross the finish line again. For me, I like the idea that experiences are finite. It reminds me to value them and enjoy them, knowing they don't last forever. It makes me more appreciative of them, both while I'm doing them and then once I've finished and look back. For example, I've been to some amazing countries that I will never visit again, but had incredible times while there and look back with huge fondness. Other people go to the same holiday resort year after year after year and plan to keep doing so forever. Neither's right, neither's wrong, whatever works for you. For me, in the same way that there's almost a limitless number of countries to visit, my Saturday mornings have an almost limitless number of activities that I want to try and squeeze into them. So I'll be doing that and looking back, thankful that I found parkrun and proud of how far I got with it, and incredibly pleased with how many people I know have gone and done it themselves because I've said it's such a great activity to be doing. That is it. The next time I talk about parkrun, it will be to revel in my 18-minute something time. And then you'll also be able to see it in all its glory because Jenna will be given very clear instructions on where to stand with the camera and film me. And lastly, talking of Jenna, if you're still thinking, do you know what, I bet if she'd met you before all the exercise and weight loss, your charm and quick wit would have won her over. I did wonder that myself, and I actually asked her a couple of days ago, knowing that I'd be filming this. And she said, I'll tell you what, let's spend some time talking about how best to film you next time you're out running.